So you're all very welcome. You're rolling in there as I speak. I'm here with my brilliant guest, Wendy Kennedy. And so before we start, I just want to welcome you all to Positive Nights. And we've been doing these events live, obviously, for years, and we'll be back live pretty soon. But we love doing these online events as well because we can talk to anybody, anywhere in the world, which is brilliant. So I saw Wendy in a movie. I think it was called Tuning In a few years ago. And then I started to the videos of Wendy are hard to get, actually. I remember at the beginning, I'd have to search you out a good bit, but I found some really cool videos. And I just thought the information really, really resonated with me. And I think it resonates with a lot of people. It's clear, it's coherent, and it's also got a practical side to it. You know, you can really integrate it into your life. So I think it's brilliant work that Wendy's doing. And I think at the moment we need to gather as much as we can people like this, people who are raising the consciousness on the planet. That's our focus. And Wendy Kennedy is definitely one of those people. And I'm delighted to have her here tonight. So give her a little wave there, guys, and welcome Wendy to this event. Brilliant.
Thank you so much for having me.
I can see smiles on faces there. People just so delighted to see you there, Wendy. So let's do a short meditation, folks, just to center everybody. So I'm just going to invite you all to place your hand on your heart, if that feels comfortable, and take a couple of breaths into your heart center. So just get the sense that you're moving from thought and you're moving to feeling. And just get a sense of how your body feels and how you are in this moment. And really tune into your heart center. And as you feel into your heart center, just let go of, or just feel the difference, if you like, between thought, which is kind of usually located around our mind or our head, and now where you are now, which is feeling. So just get the sense that there's no real need for judgment. You're just in a feeling space. So I ask you now this evening for the event to stay in this space. So just when you hear something that resonates, take that with you. And if you hear something that doesn't resonate, just let it fall away. No need to go into judgment, no need to go into any thought about it. Just let it fall away and take what resonates. And use your heart as your guide. And now just take another couple of breaths before we come back into your heart center. And feel yourself really bringing all of your energy now into the present moment, so that you're present and you're in a very kind of expansive space where you can feel into what feels right. And as you open your eyes, have a big beaming smile on your face, a big smile in your heart center, and you're wide awake. Brilliant. And Wendy, you're very welcome. And I know you've been doing this for over, I mean, millions of years, 2003, since you started. So you're real one of the pioneers of the whole area of channeling. So it's great to have you as a guest. I really want to kind of get in at the deep end kind of straight away, and we'll go into your background a little bit just to give people a sense of how this all started. So maybe actually let's start there. Yeah. So can you give people, I'm sure you say this all the time, you have this, how it all happened, but it's good to set the stage, I think, for people who haven't seen you before. How did this all start for you, Wendy?
Well, first, let me thank you for having me here and being able to connect with your lovely audience. So this started back in, actually, I think 1994 for me. I started having visions and I didn't know what they were. I was living in Chicago at the time and I was living in this old building. And so I thought maybe the visions that I was having, I thought maybe they were connected to the building somehow. And they weren't the most pleasant of images, but I wasn't really frightened by them. And I was more curious about them. And so I started doing some research on past lives and on, hauntings and buildings and that kind of thing. And I came across channeling. And at the time, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anybody who did it, but I felt very drawn to do it myself. So I got a couple of books and, this was in the, early mid 90s, and there was really not much out there yet, except for maybe the Seth materials. I think Barbara Marciniak had published, I think maybe one of her books by then. And so I did some of the exercises in the books and nothing was really happening. I was trying to channel verbally and that wasn't working. I would have a visceral response. My eyes would flutter and my whole body would tingle, but I couldn't get any words out and I wasn't hearing anything. And so on the interim, I did a lot of work on myself. I studied meditation and did self-development. And over the course of about a year, 9 months to a year, I kept coming back to practice. And finally, one day when I sat down, I realized that I needed to have a pen and paper. And I started doing automatic writing. And that was kind of my breakthrough moment. And so I did that for probably about another 9 months. And then the Pleiadian Collective came through. And they're a group of about 2,500 beings of light. And they work primarily with me, with the public. So I actually have a lot of different guides that I work with, but they were waiting for me to channel verbally. And at that point, right before they came in, I was hearing what I was writing in advance, and it became cumbersome to actually write it because I was hearing it much faster. And, they said, put down the pen and just allow the words to flow. And once I did that, that's when the Pleiadian Collective came in, and it's really pretty much gone from there. So I think this is year 26, something like that. It's crazy.
Wow, 26 years. Amazing, amazing. So there's a number of sources that you work with, okay? There's a number of beings that you work with. I mean, are you most famous for the P's, or is that just the way I'm hearing it? Or, I mean, yeah, it's such a collection that you work with. So I'm just wondering, what do you feel you're most famous for?
I think probably the Pleiadian Collective, because they are what people are familiar with when I work with the public. Always in the background, there are lots of other beings. My own guides are there. You and I were talking about this before we went live. I actually work with beings from Arcturus and Sirius. Sometimes they're beings from Lyra, Cassiopeia. It really just depends on what information I'm seeking, what information I need, the frequencies that I need. And I also work with the language of light. So as soon as I started working more and more with that, probably about 6-7 years ago, more of them started showing up in a direct way to kind of lend their energy. If you've ever seen me do any kind of meditation, the Syrians are always the ones who take point on that. every single meditation that I've been given, that I share, they're the ones who are giving that. So I don't always tell people that, oh, now the Syrians are going to speak, they're going to talk for a while, and then the Pleiadians are going to come in. And kind of the interesting thing is that, when I channel, it's not that energy is coming straight into my body. My energy is going up, their energy is coming down. We kind of meet in the middle, and then I translate and allow that to come, my own energy, to come back through. And sometimes they braid energy. So there might be 3 or 4 guides braiding their energy up top and where we meet. So I'm getting all that data and all that information from all those different guides and then translating it. But I don't always tell you. You might notice sometimes that the energy shifts slightly because some other beings have shown up and kind of lended their frequency to the moment. But it's always a full house.
And I'm just wondering, over the years, has your filter really refined itself so that you can, sometimes you go into that space, you might get a bit fearful, or you might, I think it was one of your channels where I heard the P's particularly say that everybody has an agenda, so that's kind of fascinating to me. So, even if somebody has a good agenda, it's still an agenda that they have, which is different to the agenda that you may have. So I just wondered, over the years, when you've been out there connecting with all these different energies, are you at a place now where if you encounter something tricky, or is it just, is your guidance system really strong now that you feel very safe who you're engaging with, and the information you're receiving is worthy to receive?
Definitely is different than the beginning. The beginning was a big lesson in recognizing frequency. And I was lucky enough to work with 2 other people who also were channeling. So the 3 of us could work together. One person would ask the question, the other person would listen, and the odd man out got to just kind of listen inside. And it was an amazing way to kind of get confirmation on what you were hearing, because the other person would give the same information that you were hearing. And we also were kind of helping each other because the energy would shift and we might not necessarily recognize it immediately. And somebody would go, that feels different. Does anybody notice that the energy's gotten a little heavy? And so it was very, very helpful, but that would happen quite frequently at the beginning until we got really good at holding our resonance and letting go of some of that fear and doing our own inner work. And I think even today, you have to use your discernment. And that's the one thing that the guides taught me early on. It doesn't matter who's giving me information. I have to really see if that sits with me. Is that something that's in alignment with me? Is it advice that I want to take? Because it's really no different than getting advice from a friend. Sometimes the quality of the advice might be great, and at other times, not so much. So we really have to use our own discernment. And I think I'm much better at that today. And part of that is just life experience. As we get older, we are better at using discernment because we've been through situations where we had a sense that, oh, I really should have listened to my intuition in that moment, and I didn't. But that's only in hindsight that we can recognize that. So some of that just comes naturally as we get older, I think.
Yeah, it's just that, that meditation I did at the beginning, I've been doing that for a long time in my groups and stuff. And I saw you do a very similar one where you said, because I said it used to say exactly that. And I learned it from an old Reiki teacher who used to say, if it resonates, take it. And if it doesn't, let it go. But it's this whole thing of having absolutely no resistance to what you do not want. Like, there's a tendency on Earth that when you see something you don't like, you kind of give out about it, right? And it's happening at the moment. We're all giving out about different things. But I love when I'm in a space where I'm in a really good space and I see something that I'm not interested in, and that's the energy I feel. I'm just not interested in it. There's no rest. There's nothing going on between me and that energy. And then I'm able to say, this is what I want to do, right? And I've heard you say, in the channelings, and I've heard it from a lot of teachers, but I think it's a really powerful message that you give absolutely zero attention to the thing you do not want, and you move to the thing you do want. Can you talk a bit about that, please?
Yeah, because the guides say that when there's something that you don't like, you want to make it separate from you. And the moment you want to make something separate from you, you're cutting off source energy, because it is part of source energy. So, you know, if you think about 100% of the bandwidth of source that's available to you, you've just cut it in half. So when you find something that you don't like, the universe wants to heal that. The universe wants to help you to move back to a state of connection. And so it will bring you that reflection of the thing that you don't like until you heal that. So if you don't like something, you're going to stay engaged with it, because that level of dislike is of a particular frequency. It's a lower vibrational frequency than one of acceptance and just a choice for you not to engage with it. The acceptance allows it to be there, and you're not trying to make yourself separate from it, and you just elevate to a frequency that's higher. So you're not engaging with it. They're just kind of on parallel levels. And that's what the guides say. If you there's something you don't like, then acknowledge it. It's a valid option, and then choose something that you do want instead.
Yeah, it's a very simple formula, but we get a bit sticky with it sometimes, don't we? Because we tend to go into resistance. Yeah. We're in a really fascinating period on the planet right now. Everybody agrees. Something's going on. Definitely, we're having a serious shakeup. So the topic that we kind of focused on tonight was frequency, living a higher frequency and walking through this planet right now and maintaining that frequency. So just on a simple level, and the P's go into this, how to inhabit a frequency of your choice, how to just inhabit that frequency. And I heard you say recently that you just practice it, you just pick something like peace and love, and you just say, I want to feel peace and love, and you go into that, and you keep repeating it on a daily basis, so you inhabit that. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, how to inhabit these higher frequencies in a natural way?
Yeah, so that's really it. It is about practice, because the guides say there is no frequency that we haven't at this point already experienced. It might have been a long time since we felt some of those things. Maybe it's joy, maybe it's peace, maybe it's bliss. Usually the positive end of the spectrum, those are the things that we're seeking. And it's as simple as imagining it. So if you say, I'm joyful, you might be able to hold that for a couple seconds, that thought, and then the ego mind kicks in and says, no, we're not joyful at all. We have this problem and this problem and this, and then this is going on over here. And it kind of runs away with your focus. And then if you say, I wonder what it would be like to be that thing, it's much easier, because then the ego isn't threatened and you don't get those programs running in the same way. And whether you say, I wonder what it would be like to be this thing, or I am this thing, both of them will put you in alignment with the frequency. So that's one of the things that the guides will have us do, is just to imagine what it would feel like to be whatever it is that you want to be. Now, typically they recommend that you just work with 1 or 2 frequencies at a time, because otherwise we aren't aware of the subtleties of the energy. And also we might not recognize the frequencies as they're showing up, because we're distracted trying to look at too many things at once. So if it's peace that you want, or maybe you want connection, maybe if somebody is longing for a relationship and you've asked for connection, and so you're imagining what would it feel like to be connected. And then you go through your day and you check in. Am I feeling connected? Well, no, I'm thinking about this conversation I had with my boss, and that didn't go well, and I'm feeling very defensive. So you stop in that moment, you take a nice deep breath, and then you just reset yourself. You think about how it would feel to feel connected. And you just keep doing that throughout the day. You keep checking in. And then at the end of the day, you kind of take stock and see, all right, so how did I experience connection today? Maybe it's the relationship, the thing that you thought you wanted, the form that you wanted that connection to show up in, didn't show up in that way, but you had a lovely time connecting with nature. You were able to get outside today, or maybe you had a great conversation with a friend. It's important to acknowledge where those frequencies show up in your life so that you can expand it, so you can have more of that. It's a really important step that sometimes we miss because we get fixated on the form of what we think we want. Sometimes what we think we want isn't really what we want, because if we got it, then we'd be like, yeah, no, or we'd be really unhappy with it. It would create more challenges and problems for us. So know that you're getting exactly what you need in each and every moment. And that sense of gratitude and appreciation just reinforces your desire to continue to emit that frequency, and the universe, it sees that, and it will start to bring you more opportunities to express that frequency, to experience that frequency.
And even though the game has heightened, the state on the planet has heightened, it's still the same skill, right? It's still the same skill. You're still being invited to inhabit a frequency of your choice. And I think a lot of people in the beginning, we thought we had to go outside to get that. And now I think it's pretty much, it's even mainstream now. The happiness is kind of an inside job, you feel it and then it reflects back to you. So
we're waiting for those external circumstances to make us feel a particular way, and that's backwards. So what happens is we feel a particular way, we embody the frequency, we pulse it out, it gets reflected back to us, and it reinforces that original feeling. So in the process of manifestation, we're forgetting that first step, that we have to embody the frequency first. And today it's more important than ever that we decide how we want to feel instead of reacting to the external world or feeling the way that we're told we're supposed to feel, which too often is fearful right now. There's so much negativity, so much fear being pumped out into the world in terms of the news outlets. And that doesn't matter whether, you're watching mainstream media or alternative news. Most of it is negative. It's not positive. It's not positive life. And and so it's really important to keep coming back to the frequencies that you want to embody, that you want to see in the world, that you want to experience in your life.
It's funny because when I set the magazine up, I couldn't believe the name of it, because another lady set it up before me and I took it over. But I had a boss years ago, and he used to say to me, he was a sales marketing guy, and he would call me into the office and say, give them the good news. So when you were selling to people, give them the good news. And I would say, okay. And that's what the whole sales ethos in the company was. And the magazine, when I started, I just decided, I'm just going to cram it full of good news. And it just uplifts you, even when I read it myself, I go, I feel differently, So imagine if our media was just flipped, or just even balanced, that give us some good stories, give us some tricky stories, but it's so slanted. The media actually is really, I think our media is going to change anyway. So we're on the way, we're going the right direction. What I wanted to ask you, Wendy, was you have access to our galactic star family. You must have a great sense of expansion in your own self, that that you have this extended family in the stars, okay? People talk about disclosure. This is going to come out. This is going to really change life on our planet when we find this out, but this in your heart and soul, that this is real for you, okay? So what's it like to wake up every day and know that I have access to this incredible galactic family, if you like?
Well, it's so normal. It's such a part of who I am. I don't really think about it. It's more navigating the human condition that's a little more challenging for me. At the beginning, it was very difficult for me because I did remember that I was part of this bigger community and I felt abandoned on this planet. I felt like, you just dropped me off on this rock and left me. It was very difficult. And I know that happens for a lot of people as they start to connect with their stellar family. They feel very sad and they can start to feel very, very depressed because you look out at the human condition, especially now, and it's not particularly uplifting. That sense of connection, that unconditional love is not always easily seen. I won't say that it's not there because it absolutely is there, but it's not the first thing that perhaps we'll notice because of social conditioning and just what we were talking about with the news and what we're exposed to on a daily basis. But I think there is a sense of maybe greater ease that I have, a sense of, I guess, relaxation and knowing that there is more than just the despair that I see right in front of me and that I can connect to that at any point. And I think that's true for everybody. It's not unique to me. It's just a matter of grounding and connecting to the earth and putting yourself in your heart center. The meditation that you just did at the beginning that allows all of us to connect to that heart-centered space. The guides describe it as having two different operating systems. We've got the operating system of the mind, which allows us to play in the illusion of separation, which is a pretty amazing thing because it's unlike any other game that we get to play in this universe. And then we have the operating system of the heart, which doesn't have any filters of lack, limitation, and separation. It just allows us to connect to source energy, to our guides, to our higher selves. And we can access that at any time. You just have to go back to the heart. And the guides say it's as easy really as thinking of something that makes you smile. That's the fastest way. You can also think about gratitude, compassion, appreciation. Those frequencies will allow you to access that center as well.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. But I just as well, I wanted to get, I've heard our relationship with galactic, the Galactic Federation and these kind of terms. I've heard this kind of stuff before. And I'm just wondering, I've heard also the Pleiades described as us in the future and different kind of things. What's your sense of that? Like I think there's a lot of attention on this planet right now from other star systems. And what are we in relation to them, in that sense? When are the Pleiades us in the future? Someone described that before and it just kind of confused my mind. So can you explain that to me maybe?
Well, first off, for those who don't know where the Pleiades is, it's in the constellation of Taurus and it's an open cluster. And the guides say it's about 750 stars that make up the cluster that they consider that system. And the guides that I work with specifically, they're ninth dimensional. They don't have physical form. They don't incarnate to a planet. They actually align with the blueprint, the mission, the purpose of the star Alcyon or Alcyone. And that star is a library. It's a repository for information where all of the records from all of the experiences had in the entire galaxy are stored. Now, our sun acts very much the same way. It records all of the information for all life in our solar system. And then Mother Earth has her own version. And then you yourself have a version, and you're kind of like the paperback, if you think about it that way. And then our sun would be the branch library. And then Alcyon would be, I'm not quite sure what it is in Ireland, but in the US, we have oh my gosh, my brain has just gone offline. But we have a bigger library. And so we can tap in at any different level that we want to. It's not that those records are unavailable, but it's much easier. And there are beings who kind of oversee it like librarians. So, if you need a particular piece of information, the librarians can help you to access, to tell you where to find the frequency that you're looking for. So the group of Pleiadians that I work with, they actually work with the records. Library of Congress. That's what I was trying to think of. That's the word. That's the name. So,
and Akashic springs to mind as well.
Yes.
I don't know if that's relevant. Yeah.
Yes, so it's a version of the Akashic records that's stored in the star, in the consciousness. It's held in the consciousness of the star. So there are beings in other dimensional ranges in the Pleiades, and there are many different species within the Pleiades. So, you're talking about 750 stars. Has a whole lot of planets and a whole lot of beings. And so I think, we think of the Nordics, we think of the Blondes as the Pleiadians, but there are many beings. Some of them are reptilian, some are avian. Very early on, I had a being named Capek who came to me, and he was Pleiadian, but he looked like a bird, a 6-foot tall bird. And they're all different kinds of beings in those systems. So it's important just to stay open. There are people who have worked with some of these Nordics, and they have very strong beliefs about the Pleiadians and who are the true Pleiadians and the ones that have, only the true message. And, I'm not buying that. I don't believe in that. All of these beings have a version of the truth, because truth is always colored by perspective. You can have 100 people watch an event, and each of those people will tell you a different story about what transpired. Mm-hmm. Are they wrong? Not necessarily. It's just a different perspective. So information is always colored by those beings, and it's colored by us as we are receiving the information. Now, in terms of the future, they say the past, present, and future, they exist all at once, mm-hmm. Past, present, and future. We, in order to play this game, perceive it from a linear perspective. They describe it as a giant ball, if you think of a sphere. And on the surface of this sphere, there are all these little dots, and every dot is a now moment. So we move from now moment to now moment to now moment, and we string them together, and we give ourselves the illusion of a timeline. And typically what will happen is we'll stay pretty close to the previous now moment's frequency. So if you're envisioning the sphere, we're staying on one side of the sphere. We're not moving very far. But we actually have the ability to shift to any now moment that we want to. So every now moment is built on an agreed upon set of circumstances, what's going on with the collective energy, and then what's happening at the personal level, the stories that we tell ourselves about our lives. Now, that's the base frequency that we build the now moment on, and we can actually go to the other side of the sphere. But on the other side of the sphere, the frequency is vastly different. But we can do this. Sometimes we do it, and how we perceive it here is generally as a miracle. That's when things instantaneously shift and change. And it seems very miraculous to us, but really it's just aligning with a different frequency. Now, time itself is just a marker for an event. They say it's like a Dewey Decimal System, so we know where to find it. So the past isn't really in the past, it's going on right now. But because of the programs and the filters that we have in place to operate in this third dimensional reality, we have partitioned that off so we can play under the construct of the game. If we knew what was coming, it would change our experience of the now moment. And that's part of the beauty of operating under these assumption of separation, of limitation, of playing in a finite game. The experience of the moment is vastly different. Think about a movie that you've seen, and you've seen a trailer and you have an idea of something that's coming, and maybe it's a scary movie. So when it actually shows up in the whole movie, you're not as frightened by it. You say, oh, I know what's coming. This is the part where somebody's going to jump out. So it changes your experience of it. If you had no idea, it would be vastly different. So there are beings that are in the future who are coming back here and kind of playing around with us. To many of these beings, it's just another now moment. They're just going to a specific frequency where an event has occurred. And typically these beings, they're coming and they're interacting because it impacts their current experience in some way. So Earth is a grand experiment. It was created from genetic material from thousands of species, thousands of worlds. And along with all of this genetic material is the emotional experience of those lifetimes, of those species. And that's very unusual. The guides say, you know, if you want to go and explore the frequency of emotion, where do you go? You go to Earth. Earth is the planet of emotion. And because we have all this genetic material, we're holographic in nature. So what happens to the microcosm happens to the macrocosm. What happens within us with our DNA also shows up, it's reflected in the DNA of those who have genetically donated the material. So those species from, say, Sirius, who donated their genetic material, it shows up holographically in their energetic field, which means it's much, much easier for them to tap into a frequency, to heal, to learn. And it doesn't matter whether it happened 500 years ago in the past, 5,000, 500 million, or whether it's in the future. It happens concurrently, this transmission of data. With Earth and the grand experiment, what our gift is, what our skill that we're developing is, we're learning how to embody compassion. When we embody compassion as humans, because we're coming from this grand experiment and there's such a huge range of emotion, what happens is our experience of compassion is incredibly intense. The guides say they experience compassion, but it's nothing compared to humans when humans actually step into the frequency of it, because we've been here. It's been hard. We have a deep level of awareness of what it feels like to struggle, to be in pain, to suffer. So when we actually hold compassion, it is an intense expression of the frequency that has a ripple effect through the entire universe. And they say that it actually, as we go through this ascension process and we learn to embody compassion, it changes the universal game. That's why so many beings are here. That's why so many beings are showing up to be of support to us, sometimes from the future, sometimes from the past. They're here to be of service, to help us. And also, as we learn how to do this, and we learn how to work through some of the very issues that those civilizations may be struggling with, we send off the information of how to move into that space of compassion, how to let go judgment. And they will also go through their own elevation in their own ascension process, more or less, that go through their own evolutionary period, even if that civilization isn't going through an ascension, which, you know, simply meaning they're moving from one dimension to another, they're still going to go through an evolutionary process. This is the ripple effect that holding the frequency of compassion has. It's my very long answer to your question.
Such a brilliant answer, though. I really enjoyed that. Wow. And have you said this before about compassion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's beautiful.
Maybe not quite in that way, but yeah.
But that seemed like a real key there, you know, that was like a direct key to, you know, that's the frequency really we should be practicing. You know, we were talking about other ones there, but that's a beautiful one to practice.
Well, yeah, you know, as we let go of judgment, that's really what we embody is compassion. As we stop judging something else, we have compassion as well. And that's, you know, they always say integration is what they focus on. Integration is releasing judgment. When you do that, you're not polarized to one extreme or another, and you embody the frequency of compassion.
And before I'm going to ask another question now, before I do, just to let people know, please type in your questions, because the plan is, as soon as I finish the chat here with Wendy, we'll go into the second half and we have a Q&A with you guys. But what's beautiful is Wendy's going to go straight in and just channel. So she answers your questions directly from the channel in the second half, which is brilliant. So let's see whoever comes in. And I know the quality of the information is always amazing. So that's the second half. So type away there, folks, in the chat box. And I'm keeping you on mute because that's the easiest and quickest way. I'll ask the questions and we'll get through as many as we can. There we go. Our first question in already. Okay, so I'm going to stay with a few more. The thing you spoke about there, the kind of ripple effect of all the consciousnesses upgrading in a certain way, it's kind of amazing, you know. But right now, things look a bit strange on the planet, right? But is the whole game rigged for us to evolve? So, you know, some days I get this really excited feeling and I think this is brilliant what's happening, you know, and I get really excited about it. And I think it feels like almost a setup, you know. So it's a really good setup, you know, when you look at it that way. And is that really what's happening, do you feel? This whole thing is just kind of almost being staged for us to evolve to the next level.
Yes, I think, you know, the worry for most of us on the planet is that it's going to devolve. It's going to end up in some sort of dystopia. And the guides say we've gone too far. It's not going to go to that extent, nor would some of these beings allow it to go to that extent, because there is a point at which they would step in, because with this game, it is so important to the entire universe that they wouldn't allow it to, one, be interfered with too many beings. So we've kind of been left alone. Well, I won't say alone, because there certainly are beings who are participating and engaging with us, but unless you have a direct genetic link or there is a soul connection, it's pretty much hands off. There are only so many beings who are allowed to interact with us, and then to what extent they're allowed is also monitored. And the guides say that, you know, there's certain things that it's just not going to happen in terms of, say, nuclear war. That has a huge impact on the entire universe and the game itself. So nothing like that would be allowed to happen on this planet. If somebody launched a nuclear missile, it would not function properly. They won't allow that kind of thing to happen, but they will allow us to go through this growth process. And how are we going to learn if we don't put ourselves in the kinds of situations that are going to get our attention and force us to change? Most of us don't change unless we're uncomfortable. And so, you know, sometimes it takes us, you know, being in a position that is super uncomfortable in order for us to make that change. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. I think we're seeing things get so far along that it's forcing people to stand in their power again. And we've abdicated our power. We've allowed other people to tell us what to think, how to feel. We've lost our ability to use our own personal discernment, to use our voice, to really feel empowered in creating our reality. That's not something that we're taught in school. And I guarantee you, those who are controlling and manipulating reality for the mass consciousness, they understand that. They understand how to create reality, and they're using that. And so it's for us to kind of take back our power. And we can't really, it can't be taken from us. We have to give it. So we're not really victims. We decide, I want to play a victim. So in order to play a victim, I have to have a perpetrator. So will you play my perpetrator? Here's my power. Here's the illusion of me giving you my power. It's not something that we really can fully give up. We've just simply, for the purposes of playing the role, have lended our energy to someone or something, but it really cannot be cut off and fully given.
So the game is kind of rigged. Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
That's very comforting for people to know. Right now, who is controlling the agenda on the planet? You know, the one we're all seeing. Who's controlling that, do you feel?
The guides do say that there's a lot of off-world participation. There are some beings who have been in control in many different parts of the galaxy, and Earth is just one more planet where they've been trying to exert control. And that, you know, that's just, they're operating under their own idea that it's a finite universe. And in a finite universe, you want to have as many resources as you can possibly have. They don't remember that they are a divine being of light having a physical experience, even though it's a different species. They're not fully humanoid. And then there are beings on this planet who are aware of some of these ETs, who have been given technology and information from these ETs. And then there's just people on the planet who are kind of underneath that, who just want personal power because they're operating under that illusion of separation, that they think there's a finite amount. So I got to get mine, and I get mine by suppressing everybody else. So it's complicated, but there definitely is ET energy that's present. I think right now it's very easy to see kind of what's happening on a global scale with the world governments, that there are some people who are kind of plucking some strings. And I think most of humanity can kind of see this now, or they're starting to wake up to see it. But even beyond that, there is another interdimensional level that's going on.
Yeah, I absolutely agree on that. And the one thing that kind of strikes me sometimes is I understand that when I exert, like, so, I would imagine that the beings who are up to whatever they're up to would be quite advanced. But I understand that if I exert control in my life, it doesn't work. It smacks back at me because I understand how the law of attraction works, Don't they understand that one?
Well, they do, but you have to think about how it impacts you. For most of us, we don't like how it feels. Well, they're cut off from their emotions. So they just put more energy into what it is that they want. And they aren't so concerned about the ramifications or any of that energetic blowback. Not so concerned if somebody else is upset or hurt or any of that stuff, because they're not feeling. And that's part of what is being healed with these species as well. They have been cut off from their emotional state. So, everything has its polar opposite, good, bad, right, wrong. And some of these beings are playing that role where they're cut off from their emotions. And then here you have humans who are highly emotional, highly charged. So it's that polar opposite where, most of us, especially those of us who are in the healing arts, who are drawn to this information, we tend to be more sensitive. And it's very difficult to feel any of that. If anybody is experiencing any distress, it's very, very difficult, but they're just cut off from all of that.
Sure, that's really well explained. And I just want to, before we go over to questions now from people, is just to talk as well about the light and the dark, the duality on the planet that we work within. And I think I heard this recently in one of your talks, was that it needs to be integrated. You need to integrate both, and then you move through them. It's this. Yeah. We spoke about it earlier. When you resist something, you activate more of it. That's a very common one that I think a lot of us get now. But this ability to integrate, and you do it simply in your own life when you have tricky emotions. We were brought up to maybe suppress them. And now I think a lot of us have evolved to the point where we will sit with a tricky emotion. We will allow it to be, and then we watch it shift or integrate. It's the same with these tricky energies on the planet right now, that we need to recognize them and kind of integrate them. You talk a little bit about that integration process and how it brings us to a higher place.
So integration is just letting go of your judgment, knowing again that it was an experience. You explored the frequency. It doesn't mean you have to live and stay in that space. We are conditioned to think that suffering is just going to keep going on and on and on. And so we want to stuff it down. We want to push it down. We don't want to experience it. But we actually do have to feel it in order to let it go, to move through it, to move beyond it. And what happens is that we'll suppress frequency over time, the things we don't like, the things we don't want to feel. And then too often, we'll have an experience and, our response will be off the charts. We'll kind of we'll explode because we've suppressed for so long. So one of the things that the guides talk about quite frequently is just giving yourself permission to feel, like you were talking about. And that opens up a doorway for all of those experiences to flood out, everything that's been suppressed. And so right now, this is what we're doing. We're learning how to feel what's coming up. And if you're looking out at the world and you find yourself angry about what a politician is doing or what's happening with this institution or that institution, just notice what feeling comes up. What frequency is it? Is it anger? Is it frustration? Are you feeling persecuted? Are you feeling that your freedoms are being taken away? Are you feeling that you're not safe? You're not seen? What comes up? And what the guides say is that it's always reflected in another area of your life as well. So while you might not feel you have a lot of power to do something in terms of the government or something on a larger world stage, you do have the ability to shift that within your own life. Maybe you're not feeling safe. When you look at the world, you're looking at what's happening with the governments, but yet, you have something that's very similar in frequency, but different in form, say maybe in a relationship. Maybe you don't feel like you are safe to express your true feelings with a friend, or you don't feel safe at your job. You're not sure it's going to stay there. You're afraid that that's going to dissolve and go away. And that's where you do have more power to shift and to heal by dealing with it at a smaller level, a place where you feel that you are more empowered. And once you know what the frequency is that you don't like, you can kind of turn it upside on its head. So if you're not feeling safe, what would it feel like to feel safe? And just start imagining that as well. So that's the process of integration, is knowing that it's a valid expression. You don't have to stay in it. You don't have to live in it. You don't have to judge it if somebody else is experiencing or creating it. Usually when we judge it outside of ourselves, it's because we're doing it inside. We've got that inner critic telling us the same thing. So it's moving into that other space. And that really is what we need to see in order to create this change in the world. Because if it's side A against side B, it's just engaging in that fight over and over again. It's one side against the other, and that keeps us in that perpetual loop. We've been in this loop for thousands of years. The way that we move out of it is to see that both are valid choices and to accept both exactly as they are. And then you're not engaged with it and you can move up. That's the process of integration.
Yeah, I heard you recently say as well that when you create a problem, you at the same time you create the solution.
Yeah,
and that's really interesting, because it doesn't occur to you because you get so preoccupied with the problem. But when you actually sit with that, you can feel the solution you can feel the frequency of the solution. And just as you said there, when you're in the problem and you say to yourself, what would I rather feel? There's your solution, right? In the moment. It's really powerful. It's really powerful. So there's a few questions coming in.
Okay.
Thank you, Wendy. Some brilliant answers there for me, really inspiring. Do you want to drop in now? Are you happy to drop in now? I know you can do it so quickly. It's incredible.
And I will say this because people always ask, the Pleiadian Collective works with tone and sound. And that's why their dialect is different than my own. It's not any one particular dialect. It's just tones and sounds that they can that can be modulated. It's usually slightly elongated vowels, and the tones and sounds resonate with you at a cellular level. So I always like to say that because people are like, well, why do they sound British? Or for a while, they sounded very Australian because of the tones that they were using. So that's why.
Okay. And the light language as well can kind of sound unusual to people, but let's see what rolls. Great.
Okay. Yes, hello, dears. This is the Ninth Dimensional Pleiadian Collective, and it is a pleasure and an honor to have the opportunity to connect with you all. So first, let us just say that it is a very full house. There are many beings who are here, and every question that each and every one of you has is heard by your own guides, by guides that are just passing by. As you're walking down the street, there are guides with with people who are walking on the other side of the sidewalk. They hear you ask your question and they want to be of service. So many times, other people's guides will also show up to be of service to you, just as you're passing through their energetic field as they hear the call. So know that there is a tremendous amount of support for you on the other side. We always answer you. It's just a matter of whether you are grounded, heart-centered, and whether you've got the volume turned up to hear us. When you are in fear, when you are in worry, when you are in doubt, blame, anger, frustration, you cannot hear us. You have to move into that operating system of the heart. Think of something that makes you smile. And then you start to receive information. You start to get wisdom, ideas, hits, inspirations. What will happen is in that moment, it's very clear. And then you'll go back to the mind. You'll go back to the operating system of lack, limitation, and separation. And you'll start pulling apart the information that you got, saying, is this real? Is this just my imagination? But as you practice, as you explore it, you will notice that it feels different than your imagination. Your imagination feels rather flat in comparison. The frequency is different. So we say, go with it. And, ask for confirmation, ask your guides to help put confirmation in your field until you get it or you no longer want it. All right. And what will happen is you will get your confirmation. It will reinforce your belief in the frequency of what it is that you're getting and make it easier over time as you go. All right. So that's 2 cents there. We just wanted to throw that out there. So how may we best be of service to you today?
Okay. So I have a question here for you guys. Kevin is asking, what is compassion?
Well, compassion really is an heart-centered focus for what is in front of you, whether that is other people, whether that is life for experience. It is a mirror of that heart-centered energy that is being reflected back to you. You are holding that space of passion, appreciation, gratitude. That is what compassion is. It is having a full acceptance of others in the moment and having love for them. All right, that's the easiest way we can put it.
Nice one. Thanks for that question, Kevin. So I have one here from Helen, and she's asking, how do we let go of judgment?
Well, we're just looking at, there are lots of ways for us to answer that one. So letting go of judgment is in part creating a new habit. For many of you, judgment is a habit. You have gone back to an old program so often that the neural pathways are very deep. So sometimes as you start to let go of judgment, it's going to take a while. You have to keep coming back to this heart-centered space. And eventually you'll wear a new neural pathway. You'll make new connections. You'll entrain the heart with the brain, and you will create these new pathways. So the default setting is on acceptance instead of judgment. So sometimes it's just practice. It's starting in the moment to just tell yourself, all right, this is a valid option. Do I want to condone the behavior of what that person has done over there? No, not necessarily. I don't think it was the highest choice possible. Do I want to engage in that frequency? No. But that person is also a spark of the divine. That person is exploring a range of frequency, just as you are. Now, we guarantee that anything that you're judging in another person, you're judging in yourself. Maybe that person robbed a bank. They felt like they didn't have enough. All right. You didn't play out that kind of scenario in your life. You didn't go rob a bank. But in your life, maybe you felt like you didn't have enough of something. Maybe it was love. All right. Maybe you felt like you needed to manipulate a conversation to get some approval. So in essence, the energy, the base frequency is the same. The mask that it wears is very different. So you might not have felt good about that. Oh, I really prodded them to get that compliment or to get them to come to my side so I could feel accepted, to feel like I had enough. And that person over there robbed a bank, all right, because they didn't feel like they had enough. It's just a bigger expression of that energy. Mm-hmm. So as you heal that within yourself to know, I have enough, I'm safe, I don't need other people's approval, I am a divine being of light. So is that person over there. They had the same program you had. They just played it out in a bigger way because they didn't get it when it was small. They didn't recognize the subtleties of the frequency until it got to a bigger level where they created that and said, oh, now I see it. It's pretty obvious now. It's a big deal now. So as you can see that, it makes it easier for you to heal within yourself, deal with your own issues. And as you deal with them within yourself, you will no longer judge what is outside of you. You're not judging what's in you. So that reflection, one, outside of you is probably not going to show up. Sometimes it'll still show up so you can kind of verify that you learned the lesson to say, all right, yes, I see that. But what will happen is that once you've healed it inside you, you'll see what goes on with someone else and you'll hold that state of compassion for them. Oh, look, they're exploring that frequency. Oh, I remember what that was like. That was a toughie. So I'll hold compassion for them as they're working through it in their own way. And you will send to them, or can send to them, the frequency of their potential. You will be able to send to them the knowledge that they are a divine being of light and capable of experiencing infinite abundance, that they are loved, that they are seen, they are heard, they are enough exactly as they are, regardless of the story that they may tell themselves. And when you do that, when you hold that belief for other people, it makes it much easier for them to find that frequency within themselves. It gives them a reference point. And they say, oh, I forgot that I have an option to feel this way. That's an option. It'd been so long since they've been exposed to it, they forgot about it. And once you are reminded, it's much easier for you to come back to that frequency, to align with it. And this happens when you think that for other people. Same thing with prayers. When you pray for someone, you're sending that energy off, reminding them of a different outcome or a potential outcome. It just makes it much easier. It's like trying to sing a note. If you don't have a reference point for that note, somebody asks you to sing the note of A, and you don't have any reference point, it's very hard. Most of you don't have perfect pitch. But if somebody plays the piano, they play that A note and say, sing it. You say, all right, no problem. You can match it. You've got a reference point. All right. And so it is with this energy that you send off to other people, the beliefs that you hold about other people. Makes it easier for them to find the frequency.
Very good. Thank you for that answer. That was great. Thank you, Helen, for that question. So I have a question from Shauna, and she's asking, is there a shift in collective awareness around using intuition?
Yes, we would say so. It is far more accepted now than, say, even 5 years ago. And you're moving through a sector of space which is rich in photonic energy. It's rich in light particles. And along with that light is high frequency energy. It reminds you of your divine state. So as you're moving through the sector of space, it reminds you of who you are and, connecting again with that heart center. There are more of you on the planet who are interested in things like meditation, yoga, Tai Chi, different things that help you to connect with your divine state. It reminds you of who you are. So most definitely we're seeing a shift in those of you wanting to do that. Now, there is kind of the more mainstream presentation of the energy, which is missing some of the finer points. And so people will feel a bit frustrated as they start to work with their intuition or even the process of manifestation. And they'll say, well, this stuff doesn't work because what I'm asking for isn't showing up. Well, sometimes it's not showing up because it's not the appropriate time. You're not in the appropriate frequency range to be prepared to receive it in its totality. Sometimes there are lessons that you need to master first. To give you an example, maybe you want to be on a big stage or you want to have a high-powered job, but you haven't mastered boundaries. And you try to go to that place energetically, and it's not showing up. It's because you have to go back and work with boundaries. What probably will show up for you are opportunities for you to set up some boundaries. Maybe people continually ask you for things and you're energetically depleted. You haven't learned to create that boundary yet. If you got that high-powered job or that position that gave you a lot of exposure without boundaries, you'd be a heap on the floor. You would feel overwhelmed by the energy that would come at you from the pressure of that job or the pressure of having so many eyes on you and people energetically wanting to grab a little piece of you, because that does happen energetically. You will try to siphon energy from other people, not necessarily in a malicious way. Sometimes it's I want to access that frequency and you haven't recognized how to go in and get it for yourself. So you try to get it outside of you. You try to work backwards. So unless you learn to have a good, healthy boundary, and boundaries really are nothing more than maintenance of frequency, it's going to be a problem. So the universe says, no, your well-being is more important than your desire to have that job. So you have to work on your well-being first, and then you can have the job. All right. So some of those finer points in the process of manifestation have been missing in the mainstream, or it's simply done at a very shallow level. And that's okay. It's a start. It's a start in waking people up to understand that, but there is a deeper level to it. And the more you work with it, the more you go inside to access it, the more you begin to recognize that, the more information your intuition shares with you. And you'll get enough confirmation over time that what will happen is you'll start to trust your intuition more and more and more. All right.
Thank you, Shauna. Thank you. New Earth Elixirs is asking if there was any item of news that you would like to interject into the mainstream media on this planet, what would it be?
Oh, there are many things we'd like to interject. First and foremost is reminding you that you're a divine being of light, that this is just a role that you have donned. It's not who you really are. The stories that you tell yourself of who you think you are just stories. Your memory, your accounts of what transpired are, we would say, less than 40% of the time accurate. And even that, there are details that you have forgotten and certain details that you just hang on to because those are issues, things you want to work through, things that sometimes you tried to play out in another lifetime. It didn't go well. And so you set up this game for yourself to incarnate and try again under a different set of circumstances to work on a lesson. Or they may be programs that the genetic line has. That's why you chose your genetic line, because your family members from several generations back struggled with this issue. So, all right, let's pick this family because it's installed. It's the software that's installed on the hard drive there. And so you go from there. Sometimes it's programs and beliefs that you buy early on, even in utero, that you pick up and believe about the world. And it's not really true. It's just a story you tell yourselves. So if there's one thing that we would want to shout from the rooftops for you all, it's that you're a divine being of light, an infinite being of light, having this physical experience. You can choose the frequency. You choose your reality and what you want to manifest by the frequencies that you hold and emanate. Most of you have abdicated your conscious expression of frequency. And you've defaulted to all of these subconscious beliefs that you brought in to start you off on the game of integration. All right. That you've got to have a blueprint to start with. So you choose your family line, you choose some past lives to install in the field, and the rest of it you partition off. And, that gets you started so that you can work on, let's say, persecution. Maybe you want to work on boundaries. Maybe you want to work on a sense of freedom. Maybe you want to work on self-acceptance in this life. So you will create families, or choose families that have those issues. And, you've got some past lives there that have that same issue. So you'll store some of those in your local field and go from there. So that's one thing. Also knowing you're not alone. There's so much support for you on the other side. You all feel so alone, and you're not at all. Probably within the next 3 years, you're going to be introduced to more of your stellar family. We're still not sure on the exact timing of that. There's still a lot of, shall we say, disagreement among those who are observing and participating. And the reason the disagreement exists, because those of us who are non-physicals, our desire to work with you is really about empowering you and allowing you to figure things out on your own, giving you enough space. And, when we're non-physical, there still can be a little bit of doubt about who we are, what's really going on. And it doesn't shatter your perception of reality. When you have an ET show up face to face with you, it absolutely shatters your perception of reality, the illusion under which the game has been played. It's a game changer, and there is no going back from that. For many of you, there is still a great amount of fear. And showing up when it generates so much fear is counterproductive. And that's why many of us have chosen not to show up in such a direct way to the collective. But you're coming to a point where enough of you are starting to wake up, you're questioning things, that we will start showing up more and more, at least at the individual level, if not at the larger collective level. All right. It is our wish that you be empowered. We don't want to take power from you. We want you to feel empowered. And that means you've got to work first on your boundaries and your safety sense. Because here's the thing. All the things we've talked about, all the issues that you might play out at the human level, you will also play out interdimensionally. If you're not feeling safe with interdimensionals, look to your current life where you're not feeling safe. If you are giving up your discernment, if you are saying, well, this ET told me to do this, that, and the other, and I just went and did it, I didn't think about it, they must know better than I. Don't do that. All right. They have a different perspective. It's just different. And it doesn't mean that it's the perfect fit for you. Check in. How does this piece of information sit with me? Is this something I want to do? Think of it like advice from a friend. How good is the advice that you're getting? And too many of you would give up your power. So you're learning right now how to stand in your power. You're learning to use your discernment. When you look at what's going on around the world, this is a very valuable lesson, because once you start to anchor in this lesson, your stellar family is going to start showing up. They're waiting for you to step into your power, because they don't want you to abdicate power to some other group that needs to come to an end on this planet. All right. Did we answer the question?
Yes, that's the news. So we have another question here. Okay. Is it as important, effective, and beneficial to forgive a situation? For example, dealing with frustrating mechanical online systems and slow bureaucracy at work, as it is to forgive another person. So to forgive a situation, does it have the same importance as forgiving another person?
Absolutely. because really forgiveness is for you. It's you harboring judgment. And judgment is very hard on the body. Judgment will create, it will activate your sympathetic nervous system because it puts you in your fear programs, in fight or flight. And so when you are operating from that sympathetic nervous system, you're creating chemicals in the body, stress hormones. You're not digesting in the same way. Your adrenals are working overtime. There's a lot that happens to the body when you're in stress, and anger is a form of stress. So whether you're angry at the computer or you're angry at a person, you have to let it go. You have to just accept the moment as it was. There are things that you might not have an awareness of in the moment. Sometimes the universe is operating to protect you. So let's say you get stuck at a red light because the guy in front of you didn't go. He was asleep at the wheel. Not literally, but he was playing with his phone, say. And you didn't make the light. And so you're getting all frustrated, tapping your foot there, screaming obscenities at him. And what you don't realize is that by staying an extra minute, you've just avoided an accident that you could have been involved in. So sometimes the universe is simply organizing things in a different way because you are not a vibrational match for the experience that is about to happen in that particular time space area. All right. You are being rerouted. Sometimes to avoid frequency, sometimes to move you into a match that you are looking for. Maybe you've asked to be connected with a new romantic partner. And by taking that detour, you arrive 2 minutes late and you bump into somebody new. You're able to make that connection because you're 2 minutes late. It's a frequency match. But you, as the human being, get upset because you think it didn't flow in the moment. Every experience you have is divinely perfect. Absolutely everyone, even the ones that seem like a hot mess. And how you respond to it will tell you how you are expressing or suppressing divine light in any given moment. Every moment teaches you. Your response to every moment teaches you. If you're getting upset about something, then you are cutting off part of source energy and there is something to be healed. You are not aligning with your divine nature. You are aligning with the illusion of separation, a fear program. So it is important that you let go of anger and that you forgive. All right. When you embody forgiveness, compassion, you actually start operating out of the parasympathetic nervous system. You start creating different chemicals within the body. You start creating coherence between the heart and the brain. They start communicating in a different way. They're sending signals holographically, as well as through your nervous system. All right, you're sending signals. And what that allows you to do is to embody a greater sense of your divine nature. Your body goes into health and repair. All right. You're digesting properly. You're absorbing nutrients properly. Your body is healing itself. And when you're in stress, none of that's happening. None of that's happening. So it is vitally important, as we said, forgiveness is for you. Sometimes people could care less whether you're upset with them or you're forgiving them or not. It is for you. All right. So we hope that helps.
Okay, I have myself on mute. Sorry there, please. Here we go. I have a question actually from the chap here with me tonight. Brendan is asking about frequency on notes, 432 hertz, that kind of stuff. Does listening to music at that level affect our frequency? And
Absolutely.
Is it important? Yes. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Because some of these frequencies that you've all rediscovered, they put you back in balance with nature. You'll find that there are certain scales, certain harmonic overtones that you are drawn to. And you will notice that immediately when you hear some of these tones, when you hear the music, your body goes into a state of relaxation because it reminds you of your true divine nature. It is the natural rhythm of the universe. You are being bombarded right now with a lot of music, a lot of frequencies that are disharmonious, that are very disruptive and out of balance with your energetic biological field. All right. So sound is one of the most potent healing modalities you've got on the planet right now. And as you explore more with that, you'll find that you can have even more powerful healings within the body when you start working with overtones and harmonics. It works in multiple levels, not just at the physical body, but within your energetic field. Your energetic field forms the physical body. It creates and generates the physical body. You can change your DNA by changing your energetic field. All right. Some of your DNA is somewhat dormant because it's not being vibrated. You're not running frequencies that express that way physically. And there are some frequencies you are expressing that you don't want to be expressing. So illnesses, you've got limiting beliefs in your field, which are a vibrational match for illness. And when you hold some of these lower thoughts, you create a field and an energetic body, a physical body that allows those to take hold. It's a hospitable environment. When you live in the heart-centered space and you're vibrating, your thoughts, your emotions are of a higher nature. It's acceptance, love, appreciation, gratitude. As we said, remember, this heart-centered space creates a very different set of chemicals in the body. And when you do that, it's not compatible with some of the pathogens that you're exposed to. They can't thrive in that. And that's why some of these tones and, just simply your belief systems and holding higher thoughts is so important.
Second part of the question was, will they set up another Atlantis or another Mu, Atlantis and Lemuria?
You are the second coming of Atlantis. You are it. Atlantis was kind of a preparation for what's going on right now. Atlantis was the last civilization that had awareness of what was going, that it was connected to source energy, that it was connected to the galaxy. In Atlantis, they had off-world technology. They were working with some of the very beings who are controlling and manipulating events right now. Some of the Anunnaki were on Mars at the time, and there were Atlanteans who were communicating with them, and they got some bad advice. They followed the advice, and it did not end well for the Atlanteans. These beings were waiting until Atlantis fell to really come back and play in this domain again. Some of these beings were here about 400,000 years ago, and they were waiting. They were waiting to come back. So, Atlantis had some of the deck stacked against it, meaning Atlantis was an opportunity to integrate polarity. Many of the issues that you're working on were worked on in Atlantis, but at that time frame, you weren't moving through a sector of space that was rich with photonic energy. So you didn't have that extra lift, that extra access to high frequency energy that you've got now. And that is a game changer. So it prepared you, those of you who were there in Atlantis, even those of you who were there in Mu, it prepared you for what you're experiencing now. But now you've got the extra support through this sector of space. So you will pull memories from that time period. All right. You'll access that information. Again, you'll remember, in Atlantis, I worked with tone and sound. Or I can remember bilocating in Atlantis. I remember working with crystals in Atlantis. All right. And it helps you to recall expansion, connection with nature. There was more use of feminine energy there. And you're learning how to work with both the divine feminine and divine masculine. The masculine that's used here right now is far from divine. It's the lower masculine, where it's very aggressive and it's very out of balance. And you're learning how to work more with the divine feminine and the divine masculine, which are balanced. All right, so we hope that helps answer the question.
I love when you get into bits about Atlantis. So Laura was asking, is Ireland, where we are now, is Ireland part of the old Atlantis?
Well, when Atlantis fell, many of the Atlanteans went to that part of the world. They went to Ireland, they went to Egypt, they went to South America. There were 12 groups that set out with crystals of records. They went out with information, knowing that there would be a decline in the awareness of the divine state. So they took these crystals, they took these records and saved them in temples, in pyramids. They buried them within the earth so that energy, as the crystals are buried within the earth, that energy is kind of subtly vibrating out constantly. So it is available to those that are on the planet. And then once you reach a certain stage, you can actually physically find these records and start working with them in a more active way, in a more direct way, far more intense way. But yes, Ireland was among those locations. Many of those from Lemuria also went to that area much earlier, before the Atlanteans left. You've got a lot going on there. You've got a very, very rich history with a lot of high vibrational expression going on there. And it's still held in your genetic memory, and it's also held somewhat in your folklore. All right.
Beautiful.
We hope that helps answer your question.
We're nearly there now, Pease. So I just want to have a last one for you here. Before you go, anything you'd like to share, but also I'd like to ask, this photonic energy that is the game changer sounds beautiful. How do we as beings now connect more with that photonic energy? What's the easiest way for us to do that?
Breathe, because you're bathed in it. And while it is beautiful, it's also very challenging, because it sheds light on what has been hidden from you, what needs to be healed. And as humans, most of you don't like that. It feels very, very uncomfortable, and you want to keep stuffing it down, but there's so much light on it that you can't. And that's what you're seeing reflected back right now. That's why you're seeing so much corruption, so much of what is no longer of service being shown and is more and more obvious, so that you can heal it, so that you can move beyond it. That's what this time is. Not always a comfortable place to be. It's growing pains. While teenage years were great, they weren't always comfortable. They were distressing. Now, as an adult, you can look back and you can say, oh, sometimes that was just the easiest time. It was carefree, but it was also hard. And in some ways, that is what you're going through. Although we will say, as you get to the other side, it's going to be even more carefree. All right. But you'll say, woo, we made it. We saw through the illusion of it all, and we're out on the other side. And you're still going to try to figure out the institutions, what works for you, how to build new societies. You've got to start focusing on the frequencies that you want and not the form, because you're building forms that have not been on this planet for hundreds of thousands of years. You haven't seen it. You don't know what it looks like. And even then, the forms are going to be slightly different, because the vibrational range that you're in is actually going to be different as well. So always back to the frequency. The universe's job is to create the form for you. And then you recognize that, oh, this is the frequency of what I've been asking for. I didn't dream it would come in this package, but there it is. And so I'm going to step out to engage with it. And there you are. All right. You'll have new ideas, new hits, new inspirations of things that you can do, things you never thought of before. But that only happens when you're in the heart center space. So we'd like to leave you with the language of light attunement, if that's all right.
Lovely. Beautiful. Yeah.
So for those that are not familiar with the language of light, it is source's language. It's comprised of light, sound, sacred geometry, and cosmic information. And as we work with Wendy, there are other beings who will come through as well. You might notice that it changes as we go. There's nothing that you need to know or do. It speaks directly to you, the divine being of light, having this physical experience. And it is much like someone playing that note on the piano. It reminds you of a frequency. And when you have the reference point, it is easier for you to shift your own energetic field to that resonance. And so that is why we share the language of light with you. So this is really to help you to open up, for you to feel a bit safer, for you to feel that you can fully embody your heart-centered space and trust in your own intuition. So again, nothing that you need to know or do. So just take a nice deep breath. Handa ara ara e hara emene esa kota emere izuka da barabidishka da barashka da barabidishka da barabidishka da haza era ribide barabidishka da bar anda the barabidishka da barabidishka. Take a nice deep breath. Afana aleli were shakatai ira amoija shakata asamana esa ndukutore imene barara barajukata barajukati tatakata hathara e sasakotoe imbojukata hatha azajota takata arabijukata bata tarawai. Ibirujukata barara barajukata barajukata the namanajuto to the librando emerara barajodo and nuera la mojoto to gotai in the dulu and naneja jamane is a juto takata de do in moina the way in the due is a sokoto ijaja ebata alalu wemana shishikta. Take another nice deep breath. Ibirujukata e bad de ira rabbi bijukata bijukata de bira rabbi bikata zaz body budu where rabbi bijukata bijukata bira rabbi da jita takata di buija da rabbi bijukata bijukata bijukati hita asasakata. All right, take one more nice breath. So if you want to continue working with this, you can. As you work repeatedly with the language of light and with the attunements or activations, they remind you of frequencies. And the more you're reminded, the easier it is to find it. So if you can listen to this again, listen to the recording, that's great. You can access the frequency that way, but also the information is now stored within your energetic field. So as you imagine connecting with this moment again, so it is. So you can access these frequencies. So you need not hear it in the same way that you just heard it a moment ago. You imagine reconnecting with it. The process is the same. The end result is the same. So know that we are around. You've got a lot of support on this side. You can call on any of us. You don't need Wendy. Just ground, heart center yourself, ask your question and listen. And until we hear from you, we are around, we are watching, we are waiting, and we are sending many, many well wishes. All right, so there you have it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. That was great. Thank you for all those questions, folks. They're really good. I love the bit at the end about Atlantis. Are you hearing all this as you're doing it, Wendy, as well? Yeah, or are you kind of in the background?
I do. It's a bit like a lucid dream for me. So I hear it in the moment. And then if you were to ask me in an hour, I'd really have to think about all the things we talked about. Yeah, it fades pretty quickly.
So it was great. I think people got some great answers there. That was brilliant. So before we go, I just want to say thanks again, Wendy. That was really terrific. And if you could just let people know how to find out more about your work, where they can go, the website, and what you're working on. You mentioned you're working on something new that's coming soon. So if you just let people know about that, that'd be great.
Yes. So first, again, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure. And there were some amazing questions. So I always learn so much. So thank you so much. So if you are interested in learning more, you can visit our website at higherfrequencies.net. That's frequencies plural. And right now, every month, we have a group session where we do something very similar to this. And we also have our monthly membership, which is more of the language of light and our galactic light codes. And hopefully, I'm not exactly sure when it's going to roll out, but we'll have a channeling course coming up soon. So if you're interested in that, you can find more on our website when that becomes available.
Brilliant, brilliant. So, Wendy, if I could ask you just to hang on for a second, I'm going to, as people leave, I'm just going to hang on and say a quick goodbye to you myself. So, folks, just thank you for tuning in here tonight. Feel free to leave whenever you're ready. I just want to very 10-second thing, just put your hand on your heart and just connect the group and just connect with the galactic vibes and just send out some nice little blast of love to each other and to Wendy for the work that she does and all around the planet, and to the P's and all our sisters and brothers out there in the galaxy. Just send them a blast of love. And I send all of you love. And thank you for being here. And feel free to leave whenever you can there. Thank you for your nice messages here as you go. See you next time, folks. We'll be back soon with another event. And we'll be back with some live events as well coming soon. A couple of movies we're going to show in Dublin. And Gabor Mate's movie and Thrive 2, which is a really interesting movie as well. So goodbye, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. See you next time.